Eoghan Corry, who's the editor of Air and Travel magazine, and always nice to talk to him. But with more and more Irish tourists travelling to Portugal every year, a warning has recently been issued regarding new, stricter regulations in a popular holiday hotspot, Albufeira. New rules have been implemented there with the aim of clamping down on rowdy tourist behaviour, especially on the weekends. And fines will be levied, we believe, of between €500 and €1,800 to tourists for any behaviour deemed to be boorish, because locals in the Portuguese city simply have had enough. Good morning, Eoghan Corry.
Good morning. Have had enough sums it up, but I think we're not going to turn into Saudi Arabia anytime soon. What they're talking about is the extremes of partial nudity. I love the phrase partial nudity at 10 o'clock in the morning, but that's what it has been showing up, particularly on social media. A couple of viral videos out of Albufeira, 8 people not from Ireland, from the neighbouring island, who shall remain nameless, semi-naked, throwing punches and just wrecking things. That's the sort of image that Albufeira doesn't want. The locals want something done about it. The mayor has said, I'm going to do something about it, and he's introduced pretty draconian fines, €500 up to €3,000 for extreme behaviour.
Yeah, when you look at the island of Ibiza, Eoghan, it's a really, really upmarket island with beautiful places to go, the most fantastic calas and coves, and it's got San Antonio, which from there emanates Ibiza's image as, you know, the clubbing and party capital of Europe. Isn't the Algarve entitled to its Albufeira?
Yes, you've put your finger on it. In fact, Albufeira is only about 3 streets. You can go to most of the towns that are well known for being boisterous. Our Leaving Cert students will be picking them out. They're the sort of places they're attracted to. You could go right across Europe to Benidorm and Santa Ponsa, to Haya Napa, all those places. And they all have this boisterous image, but you stray a couple of kilometres away and you can happily bring your young children and your family. You can happily find nature parks to cycle in, the same as in Albufeira. The real problem here is the extremes, and when locals get cranky, the mayor has to listen to them, and that's really what's been happening.
And when you're talking about partial nudity, you're talking about guys going around without their shirts on, or are you talking about girls wearing the bikini tops at night?
Well, here's the thing about partial nudity and night travel a lot, and I've been in a lot of resorts. How is it the most unattractive people who decide that they're going to strip themselves to a state of semi-nudity? I think really that's it. If you know, there are issues going around shirtless, for instance, in a street. It is causing offence to people, and particularly to everybody from the local town who are going to the market to pick up whatever. So they really want people to keep their shirts, their shoes on, and not to be going around with naked skin everywhere. It demeans the resort, it demeans the tone of the town, it demeans the tone of their business areas as well as their social areas. That's really probably what they're looking at. And let's be honest here, they won't be going around finding everyone in flip-flops. They'll be saying it's when it gets late at night and when people have got a bit irrigated and the behaviour gets worse, that's when I'd imagine the police will be kicked into action. They have the armoury, they have the power to impose the fines that they didn't have in the past, and that's really the point. It was passed unanimously by Albufeira Council, which means that it's not something that has any contentious, is regarded as contentious or something that will damage the tourist industry within the community.
Yeah, I've been to Albufeira, albeit in the winter, and found it a lovely, lovely place.
Beautiful.
It was so quiet, yeah. And fabulous restaurants there as well in the old town. But then we didn't have the benefit of tourists.
Good food. High-end restaurants, good best of wine. It's a great place to say in the evening. Sitting in the street, that plaza culture, even in winter. The Portuguese be looking at us sitting in the street in winter, but compared with Ireland, it's great. And you sit out with a glass of wine, and somebody with a guitar turns up from the local student or something. We've had the most magnificent evenings there. It's far removed from people throwing up into pot plants and throwing punches outside.
Although I remember Albufeira, and I'm not sure which year, or which World Cup, but if you remember when the Albufeira town...
The Euros
was almost wrecked when a certain set of fans decided they were going to tear up the town when they lost.
They destroyed the place. When David Beckham famously missed that penalty, the joke about that penalty was that there was a knock on St. Peter, on the door of heaven, and St. Peter opened the door, and David Beckham said, "I want my ball back." He'd sent it so far high into the stands. The Faro Stadium was built specifically for the Euros. They don't have a Premiership club or the equivalent of a Portuguese Premiership club. It's very rarely used. It was famously used for the Ireland-Portugal match where we led 1-0 and Cristiano Ronaldo scored 2 goals in the last few minutes to beat us a couple of years ago. But the Euros that year was a great example. England lost the semi-final on penalties. I was actually not in Portugal. I was in Thailand at the time, I think it was Phuket, and I'm not joking when I say most of the windows on the street were broken by the English fans that night. It was an eruption of the unfortunate malevolence we associate with English soccer fans, and Albufeira was subjected to it on that night. It's normally a town that it has its boisterous area, and social order offences are a problem with any of the boisterous resorts, any resorts right across Europe. What I see is if one town imposes it, Barcelona famously imposed very draconian fines a couple of years ago, the others look at it and say, maybe that's the way we should be going. And the other thing about it, the local authority structures in Spain and Portugal all are they're local towns, not just the county, but the local towns, the equivalent of Kinsale having their own regulations, Youghal having their own regulations, Bantry having their own regulations. They all have the power to impose these fines. And there's a little bit of domino effect or competitive. If you're going to penalise badly behaving tourists, the residents of the next town say, okay, why can't we do the same? And that's a little bit of what we've been seeing. Enormous publicity generated by the Albufeira case, but it has been replicated in about 20 other resort towns across Spain and Portugal this year.
Okay, I'm aware of other areas and other resorts that have milked tourism for many, many years and now are becoming... maybe self-righteous is probably the wrong word, but they're certainly erring on the upmarket side now. Santa Ponsa in Mallorca is one of them. Magaluf, not so much. But Santa Ponsa is starting to become a very expensive and upmarket area after milking Irish tourism for many years. There are other places around. If you go to Tenerife, costs are going up. Property prices have gone through the roof. They've had the good times with tourism, and now there's a very righteous need, if you like, of locals to be able to access proper accommodation. The hospitality trade is going to kill tourism if it can't operate. So there are places that are trying to weave and dodge, if you like, the need for tourism with the need for good local accommodation and the need for good order.
Absolutely. I've every single, almost, I'm probably exaggerating it, but only slightly, every single press conference I go to by a national tourism organisation, including Tourism Ireland, or a regional tourism organisation, says we want to concentrate on high-yield tourism and stay away from the mass market. The reality is the mass market is what oils the wheels of European tourism. Managing the mass market always comes with a little bit of a problem, particularly in towns where once you get the name for being mass market, you don't tend to get the others. What I've noticed, though, is Benidorm being a good example. High-end restaurants, really, really good restaurants, springing up to the south of the headland. If people are familiar with Benidorm, there's a little small area just to the north where all the karaoke bars and the restaurants, those restaurants where instead of a menu you get a plastic sheet and you point at your egg and chips and they bring it out to you because the tourists, mainly from the neighbouring island, don't expect anyone not to speak English. Mm-hmm. But the Benidorms and the Santa Ponsa that you mentioned and Albufeira, which just to start with this, all of them that have a sort of a boisterous reputation, they are all looking at we have the services in place. We have usually the water parks. We've usually good roads. We've usually good airport access. Albufeira is 40 minutes from Faro Airport. It's our second busiest trunk route out of Ireland for tourism. Why not look at getting the spas, the treatments, the horseback trails, the walking, the cycling, all of those in place? And one by one, they're all doing it. Very successful. It takes a lot of investment. It's more expensive to put in, more expensive to run a restaurant, as any restaurateur in Ireland will tell you, with 25 covers than with, shoveling people in and out with cardboard menus. But they're all doing it one by one. It means that it's a more holistic, more complete tourist experience where any of us travelling out from Ireland.
And I guess people will know if they're going over the top and if they're in line for a €500 to €1,800 fine. But the last thing you want to be doing on any of these Portuguese or Spanish destinations is being picked up by the Guardia Civil, by the municipal police, or by the very serious ones, the ones that carry guns.
Absolutely, and you got to remember the Garda. I mean, Darragh O'Brien famously said there were 3 speeds for a Garda Síochána, which is basically okay. Now I'm watching you, and then finally, now you're actually taking the maggot. So the Garda tends to be softer than what we would come across in other European countries, and you can be pretty sure there isn't an argument when they move in. When the restaurant manager says these guys have gone over the top, there generally isn't an argument. They put people in the cells for the night. It's pretty normal for it to happen in resort towns. It's almost a badge of honour among certain cohort of people from the neighbouring island that they spent nights in the cells. That's one thing, but then the big fine of €3,000 at the end of it probably is enough to curtail. What tends to happen is that it's not pre-planned, it's spontaneous, and we have one group of people egging on another. I mentioned the Leaving Cert students. My experience of them, people talk about Leaving Cert students, my experience of them is they're generally impeccably behaved, a little bit of hijinks occasionally, but nothing serious. The real problem arises with people much older and old enough to be their father.
Okay.
Their father.
Eoghan Corry, finally, if I might, as editor of Air and Travel magazine, I never really have you on without asking you about holiday trends. What are you seeing this year? I know there's a lot of youngsters going off backpacking Thailand and Vietnam. I notice a lot more of the mature crowd are taking cruises finally seeing the value of that. What sort of trends are you seeing in travel and holidays at the moment?
The main trend, back to the familiar Spain and Portugal, they are dominating, they're growing. We're nearly 30% ahead of pre-pandemic levels in our visits to both Spain and Portugal. As you say, Thailand, Vietnam are on fire. People can't get enough of it. Not just the backpackers, but the high end as well. Keep an eye out for the visa for Vietnam. You're not going to be let on board if you don't have your visa. It's now an e-visa. It was much less complicated than it used to be. Keep an eye out for the expiry date in your passport. If you've got 6 months to go, get it renewed. It'll work within Europe if you're right up to the day it expires, but it won't work in some of our other holiday destinations, Morocco, Turkey. North America, big debate about that. Are our numbers going down? No, they're not. The bookings are about 20% ahead of last year, and we've got about 30 direct routes. Do be careful with what's on your phone, but nothing is happening in Dublin Airport. There is no report back from US Immigration in Dublin Airport of them being a little bit over extensive, and one thing to keep the prices to North America have gone up a little bit. I suspect other people are travelling through Dublin to use the CPP, pushing up the prices, and it's a little bit expensive out there. We are enjoying it very much, but absolutely never as much choice from Cork Airport. Cork Airport, fastest growing in Ireland, and definitely a great summer to avoid those embedded thunderstorms. Is that what your weatherman just called?
That's what they're saying.
Get out and enjoy yourself.
All right. Well, one final question in that area. The tourism drop, which has been well heralded to the USA, is that serving Mexico? I see Aer Lingus have a direct to Cancun flight from Dublin now, and Canada becoming very important on the travelling schedule as well.
Oh, we've very good routes to Canada. We've a Newfoundland route from Dublin, as well as three airlines serving Toronto. It's great when you have three airlines on a route, because it puts manners on the people making up the prices. Mexico coming in as a seasonal, but what we haven't really seen a drop from Ireland to America. The big drops, and the ones that I'm going to be in Chicago on Friday, and I'll be talking to US travel, all of the different states, the state tourism directors, about what's happening, what the trends they're noticing is. But the big trend that's coming forward is that there's a drop from Canada, which is one of their most important markets. It's their second most important inbound market. That's going to probably, in an odd way, might help us in that the likes of the Orlando, the theme park, the Mouse, that Canadians love to see, if they're not travelling in the larger numbers, it might help our prices a little bit coming from Ireland. Ireland is up on last year. It dropped very heavily in March. That was a combination of factors, some of which I understand, some of which I don't, including the fact that Easter was later, but it dropped by 27% and bounced by 34% then in April. What we're seeing from other markets like France is a decline, but not from Ireland and not from Britain.
Okay, I have a couple of listeners want me to pop in an extra couple of questions for you. Number one is, are sunbed wars as bad as ever? That came in by text.
It's not really something that you can notice. It's
by venue,
story.
Really, isn't it? Depends.
Yeah, it's a great story. It's a sort of a story that comes up, and there are loads of tremendous anecdotes on the internet. But what I've seen is that the policing of the sunbed wars is really about the policing of them. The towel that's left there for 2 hours, is it going to be moved? I've seen it spike and recede. It's something that becomes something that they enforce, and then they don't enforce. But it's a really important thing is it's down to the individual resort and the hotel, and resorts are taking a firmer line on people just hanging onto sunbeds. It's not something that has affected customer experience, in my experience. All
right, another texter wants me to ask you, have the Spanish tourist protests died down?
No, they're gathering momentum in a way. It's quite interesting. There's one in Mallorca coming up on Sunday, and they're expecting 100,000 on their streets, which is where it started with about 10,000. The real point is that tourists aren't affected by it. It hasn't affected bookings. The spraying of water, which got a lot of publicity in Barcelona last year, seems to be a one-off incident. I would expect copycats of some description coming in, but most tourists will not notice the protest, just stay away from them. It's midday on Sunday, Mallorca, for example. And the other really important point, the most important point you can make about anti-tourism protests is not anti-tourism at all. It's about the little things that are really annoying the local residents. Spain, after the global financial recession, stopped building houses. So it became a big issue that their housing has become expensive. They see tourists driving up the price. Now, there's overcrowding issues in places like Dubrovnik, Venice, Barcelona, but the Mallorca and Canaries is really about a protest for the local politicians to listen to.
Yeah, a lot of these protests have been about housing or about employment and people getting let go and employment practices and then being labelled as tourist protests, which they aren't.
It's really, I mean, housing is the big one. When you've got Airbnb letting out and you have to pay through the nose for your own apartment, people say, well, why can't you ban Airbnb and that apartment will come on the market? Not as simple as that, as the Irish self-catering industry, which is another subject we could be doing, is looking at this morning on the rent pressure zones in Ireland. I don't think short-term letting is going to deliver the beds to the long-term market that governments everywhere believe.
All right, Eoghan Corry, as ever, across everything air and travel. A pleasure once again to talk to you all.